Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've had a wonderful day. Today, I shall have for you my updated and likely finalized wildcard draft, which I will be fielding in Game Week 12, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I will also have for you transfer plans. I will have the captaincy finalized, and I will also have the new defensive rotation, given there have been some iterations there. We are looking to push to 5,000 subscribers before the end of the month, so if you could help us get there, we're very, very, very close now. Only about 400 subs off. I would be greatly appreciative, especially for those of you who watch regularly but haven't clicked the button. If you think you could be one of them, just have a little check, and if you could press the button, I'd be greatly appreciative. But without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into the video. Right, the first two changes of the side are both in the goalkeeping department. Sanchez and Cahill have come in place for Verbruggen and Fabianski. Starting with Fabianski, why isn't he here? Well, it's purely due to budget constraints. I do not have the 0.1 million in the bank to spend. I literally have 0.0 because you'll see that there have been some changes elsewhere, meaning that I can't stretch to him. Look, is it preferable to have him? Absolutely. If you were to copy my wildcard draft and you had that 0.1 in the bank, I would suggest to you to potentially use it here. Maybe it could be used more efficiently elsewhere, as I'll show you. But for now, I'm going to have Cahill. For me, this is fine because I don't expect Sanchez to be dropped, resultant of Maresca's comments. And if I did, I wouldn't be picking him in the first place. I'd be saving 0.2 with Verbruggen. The other thing is, I've only got 2 Brighton players in my draft now. So at least if I want that third Brighton spot, I can still go and get them. And am I going to want to triple up, like an outfield triple up? No, not really, especially when I don't have Verbruggen. Hence why Cahill, I'm fine with him. Sanchez has come into the side. So why am I changing the structure and using a 0.2, which is very, very, very valuable in my position in particular, to essentially get him over Verbruggen? Well, number one, I see somewhat of a fixture disparity in terms of its quality, right? I think Sanchez is not only last for longer, but the actual quality of the fixtures he has is better. Aside from 13 and 15, I'm not overly bullish on Brighton's fixtures from a defensive standpoint anymore relative to Chelsea's. So I'm happy to have him there. I also think whilst Verbruggen's got a very good ceiling, I'd say he has a much lower floor than Sanchez because of the way Brighton play. And I think Chelsea's player quality, especially in the defensive area, is higher. Thus, I trust Chelsea more. Look, Van Heck, Dunk, Estepinian, Veltman, it's a good defense, especially when they've got like Belieber in front of them. It's by all means a good defense. But I would have the Chelsea unit of Caicedo, Lavia, Reece James, who's now injured, Colwell, Fofana, Cucurella. I would have that above that in terms of the Brighton defense. So for me, I'm very happy to go Sanchez. And also, like I said, I'm a bit of a field player, and I felt very good about this Sanchez selection. There was something about it that I really liked. So I am justifying spending 0.2 million on him, which will weaken my defense, as you will see down the line. But I'm happy to go here because I do think that I could accumulate quite a few points from Sanchez, and he's already had a great run. Another thing I would like you to look at with him is look at the recent games. Newcastle, United, Liverpool, right? And Arsenal. And he hasn't kept a clean sheet in any of those. Fair enough. But he's accumulated a decent amount of saves. Look before that, and you'll see games against West Ham, against Bournemouth, and even some of the games where he didn't haul, where he potentially could have. And there's a lot of points on offer when Chelsea's fixtures aren't too bad, right, as they have been in the last quarter. So I'm very, very happy to go with him. And honestly, I'm quite bullish. In my wildcard video, you would have seen 3 of these defenders present. You would have seen Gabriel, Ezri Konsa, who was on the bench last time, and Lewis Hall. But I've taken out Levi Colwill and I've taken out Lewis Dunk in place of Ryan Aït-Nouri and Burgess. Why? Predominantly and solely for Ryan Aït-Nouri. I would really like him in 16 and 17. He's also quite attractive in 14, I would say, as well, which I'm going to field him in. And even in 13, as a potential when he's got Bournemouth at home, considering I have none of the Bournemouth attack, I quite like him there. Simply because what he's doing is a role that not many are playing. The attacking upside to what he's doing is huge. He's always in the right positions, consistently and persistently. And most people aren't occupying the spaces that he is. Another thing is, he's actually got the technical quality to deliver. I referenced Udogie, who's often got such a brilliant role in terms of generating attacking output. However, doesn't have that technical quality, with all due respect, that final pass, that finishing to really profit for FPL managers, whereas Ryan Aït-Nouri does, especially playing in this wing-back type of role. So for me, I just think, considering I'd want him down the line, considering the ceiling's there with him, I may as well get him in earlier, and I'm happy to make sacrifices elsewhere in order to facilitate that. Burgess comes in at 3.9. Again, I need the cash because I've used 0.2 to upgrade Verbruggen to Sanchez. Now, the rotation works quite nicely, right? There were 5 fixtures initially, which Duncan Colwill had. Ryan Aït-Nouri will cover at least 4, but potentially 5 of them. So I'm not losing too much. The only place where I could potentially lose out with this combination is the fact that I was always looking to have 5 defenders, right? Just in case I'm stretched a little thin. Embuemo to Bowen is something that I'll do, and you'll see in the transfer plan section, but that will only leave me 0.4. And to go from a 3.9 to a 4.3, there's only really Anderson on offer, and his fixtures in the middle bit aren't as great. Maybe down the line in 18, but I'm looking at shifting. So that's the only real negative I see to this, but I'm happy to have Ryan Knight-Norrie's upside as opposed to the safety of Levi Colwill and Lewis Dunk. Now, moving on to the starting players, Lewis Hall, I'm delighted to have. I think Hal's shown a lot of adaptability this year, and one of his new iterations has been to use Lewis Hall in a more advanced manner, where Tino Livramento is probably a little bit deeper, especially with their left side dynamic being quite fluid against Forest. I imagine that persists somewhat, and he could definitely generate attacking returns from there. The fixtures are good. He's great on the bonus system, as pointed out by others, and the other thing with him, he's cheap, so he fits into this type of structure. Concert, again, I definitely see him having some box threat. The fixtures in 12, 14, and 15, which work wonderfully for my rotation. He's there with good fixtures, all at home as well. And there's some upside. I've also seen something from FPL Villain on X where he spoke about Unai Emery this time last year really got Villa kicking. And there was a report that he's done a lot of work in the international break, and you could see them kicking on again. So for me, I'm very happy to hold him. And then Gabriel, I've spoken about so many times, still the biggest box threat in the league, even with Marino coming in for the best set piece taking team in the league, with the best defense, and has a very good set of fixtures over the long run. For me, it's just unnecessary to get a little bit too spicy when there's not too many options that I need elsewhere, and I've got a lot of the premium assets in the positions already locked in. So for me, it makes a lot of sense to go here. But now let's go and show you the new defensive rotation. Looking at the defensive rotation, wherever you see Ait-Nouri's name, that's where Colwill or Dunk was. Dunk was there in 13 and 15, and Colwill was there in 14, 16, 17. 14, 16, 17, Ait-Nouri has brilliant fixtures, so I'd much rather have him for that. So I think I'm profiting there. 13 and 15, obviously Dunk had Southampton and Leicester, which is preferable. However, Ait-Nouri does carry more upside. And the other thing is, the only reason he's not locked in 15 is because I'm looking to bring in Jared Bowen, and they would be playing against each other. Now, that's not the worst thing in the world, given I'm not expecting the Wolves keeping too many clean sheets, and I'm really having Ait-Nouri for his attacking returns in the hope that I can pair them together once and get a big haul. But anyway, I could play Lewis Hall away at Brentford, and honestly, I don't mind that, because if Newcastle get better, they're definitely one of the sides to trust. As you can see, Gabriel, an ever-present. I'm getting, 3 fixtures out of Konsa, 4, we'll say 4 out of Hall, and 5 out of Ait-Nouri. So the spread across these 4 defenders is magnificent. I'm getting real value from all of them, especially at their price tags. Now, would it be helpful to have a 5th defender aside from Burgess? Yes, but he's played in the last 3 games. He had a very good game against Spurs. The fixtures are actually pretty decent. If I do need to field him in like 14 or 15, I can absolutely do so with good fixtures. So I don't think it's too bad having him either as cover. And you know what? I shouldn't need to stretch into the 5th defender anyway. So I'm very happy with it. One thing you'll notice about the fixtures that these defenders correlate to is initially I had a lot of Southampton and a bit of Leicester early on. I've got rid of that, but I have now got Leicester, Ipswich, Ipswich, Leicester in 16 and 17 following this new budget rotation, which I'm very happy to have. So honestly, I don't think it's a huge downgrade. I think it's maybe a little bit more risky given the structure and the shifts in that, but I'm quite happy with it. Now, the midfield has remained the same, but it was very, very close to shifting in 2 spots. I'm still on board with the idea that Semenyo is a better asset than Rodgers. I think his minutes will be better, especially with the fixture congestion that Villa have. I also see his goal threat being better, and I see his fixtures being better, and they last for longer. So for me, if I had the 0.4 to spend, I would go Rodgers. I would go Semenyo over Rodgers, absolutely. And if you have the same, or you're looking to copy the same wildcard draft, or you have thoughts, I would definitely go Semenyo over Rodgers should you be able to afford it, all right? Salah and Palmer, I'm not even going to speak about their locks. I don't think Salah's fixtures are great, honestly, after Southampton for the next 3. And I don't think it's diabolical to consider that you could go without him, assuming you see a regression, given his numbers and just general variables aren't exactly supportive of what he's been doing, aside from the fact that he's the best right winger in the world. But I think I may be overcomplicating it slightly. When he's playing so well, you probably don't want him back against the momentum or the form. And the other thing is, if Haaland's not firing and you're not going to captain him, then where else are you going to spend the money? So I think, and then Palmer's the most obvious pick in the game at the moment. So Salah and Palmer are locked. Saka, even if he's injured this week, let's say Arteta comes out and say he's out, I'm still picking him, and I'll just start João Pedro. And if he doesn't start, then so be it. I think he will anyway, with reduced expected minutes because it's his first start back in a long time. But I'm just not willing to not have Bukayo Saka for the reasons I spoke about. in my everything you need to know video, and I would definitely check that out if you would like more in-depth analysis on certain things. We covered quite literally everything you need to know. So aside from ideally upgrading Rodgers to Semenyo, the other thing I would have liked to done earlier in the week is go Mbeumo to Bruno. And I actually had a wildcard draft with Bruno, and that's what I was set on. But the one thing is, Ruben Amorim's obviously started his training sessions without Bruno, and there's been a lot of talk about how Amad Diallo and Mason Mount have looked good and could potentially look for starts on Sunday. So that's one thing. What if Bruno plays deeper? I really don't want him if he's in that pivot. And you know what? Even if he starts in the front three, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play 90 minutes because Diallo will be there knocking on the door. Mason Mount will be there, who will be looking to play a similar role. And remember, Mason Mount had an excellent season under Thomas Tuchel, which basically took him to the next level in terms of how he was viewed by the public, where he won the Champions League, playing in this 3-4-3 and playing in one of these two pocket number 10 type roles. Okay. So he could very well thrive in this type of system, and that will really put some pressure on Bruno. Now, is Bruno Fernandes a better player? Yes, but I think people have lost some respect for Mason Mount to an extent which is just unfair. Like, he is still a quality player, and there is a reason why everyone in the game pretty much rates him as highly as they have done in the past. Then obviously you've got Diallo, and even if they're to come off the bench, you've got Garnacho. Okay, Rashford might start up top. What if he shifts to the left to see how that goes? And in general, Amorim will want to see his players playing and see how they fare in that system in a game. So I wouldn't be surprised if his expected minutes are somewhat reduced. And then the other thing is that Leicester home fixture in 14-13 is something I'd really like Mbeumo for. He's been magnificent at home, and I don't really want to bet against him. He's a nice out into Bowen. He also costs for me 0.4 less, so I don't have to restructure the defense as well, and it allows me to have Aït-Nouri. So for all of those reasons, I'm pretty okay. I'm okay having him over Bruno Fernandes. The forward line, as you can see, has not changed. There is no way João Pedro leaves this side. Like I said, I think Hertz really likes him, and I think his minutes will be good in the Xmas, so Christmas period. I think he at 5'4" serves as such a brilliant facilitator for me to have a very, very strong squad overall. And there's no one else I can have at this price point. So even for that alone, he stays, not to mention the fact he has penalties, the fixture quality, the quality of the player, how I think his expected minutes are good. So he's going absolutely nowhere, and I'm delighted to have him. I could honestly start him this week, but for me, given Rodgers is at home, I'd rather have that. And it's João Pedro's first game back properly, I would say, since being injured. Many people have asked me, Nicholas Jackson or Alexander Isak. And I've said consistently that by a little bit, I would go Jackson. And that's still the case. However, if you are looking for a very, very, very short-term pick, preferably just 1 week, maybe 2, but nothing more than that, I would go Isak. Purely because I'm so bullish on his fixture against West Ham. I think they've looked so susceptible in the middle, since being played through. I think they're so susceptible on transition. I think he can exploit that magnificently well. I think Newcastle's attacking dynamics have improved consistently over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I think Howe has shown a lot of adaptability and willingness to be open-minded and change little parts of his system to improve the attacking dynamics. I think they're a little bit more set now. He's in good form. He's talismanic in nature, and I think that helps in a one-off fixture. So for me, just if you're going super short-term, I'm okay and probably would prefer going Isak. However, I still like Jackson a lot just in the long term for all of the reasons we discussed, mainly the amount of chances I think he's going to have created for him, given Cole Palmer behind him predominantly, the system, and also the fixture quality, and how stylistically it's very suitable for him. What I would say is I'm a bit more bullish for him against Leicester than I was initially. I didn't know Jamie Vardy would be out for this one as well. One thing I've seen is without Jamie Vardy, they definitely impose themselves far less on the game. They simply have less outs and less mechanisms in which to hurt the opposition. Therefore, I feel like they absorb more pressure. And I think against a side like Chelsea, against a striker like Jackson, who if you give him a bit of space in behind it, or just a bit of space generally, or he can drag one of your centre-backs into the channels, he can hurt you. So I'm a bit more bullish on his prospects against Leicester. Look, I've always said that I think you have to give some weighting to the 12:30, and I'm going to give it some weighting, but I don't think it's enough for me to essentially peg the Chelsea boys down to an extent whereby I wouldn't choose one of them or one of the three, basically, or be a little bit more negative on their prospects in general. So yeah, that's the front three, and I'm very, very happy with it. People are talking about Havertz, and I think he's a very, very solid pick. For me, even though he has the minutes like no one else does pretty much, the reason I'm not going there is because I don't think the ceiling's been as present given Arsenal's attacking dynamics. I know a lot of people are back fit, but if I always wanted, I could always just easily shift from an Isak to a Havertz if need be. Jackson, I'm not really looking to sell because of how good the fixtures are for such a long time, and it will take some cash out. So I have an easy route if that move ever needs to be made. I just prefer Isak's ceiling in the short term. For the mid-price forwards, I've obviously spoken at length about Cunha and why I've not selected him, so you can go and check that out in the Everything You Need to Know video. And then the likes of Van Nissen, look, a good pick. I just don't think I can justify him over Isak and Jackson when they're more secure, and I would say they have highest. Let's look at my transfer plans, because I think this is essential whenever building a wildcard, especially if you're going to be building a wildcard for the Christmas period. Game week 13 to 18, if I were to roll every single week, would see me have 6 free transfers going into game week 18. Now, why is that relevant? That's another fixture swing, and that's when you're potentially looking at targeting Erling Haaland and bringing him back in for Everton at home for a run that lasts about 4 or 5 weeks, okay? However, I won't arrive there with 6 free transfers. I'm very confident, because in game week 14, whilst I'll be rolling in 13, I'll be looking at transferring Mbeumo to Bowen for his magnificent fixture run, which lasts about 5-6 weeks as well, right? So I'll be down to 5 frees in 18. Now, one thing I mentioned is that I only have like 4 preferable defenders in my side, albeit I quite like having Burgess at 3.9. I think he offers good value at that price tag. If I ever needed to have a bit more depth there, then I would be using another transfer between game weeks 15 and 17, meaning that I would have 4 in 18. And I think 4 is absolutely fine. I think 4 is probably the minimum, and it means that I wouldn't have to take a hit if I'm looking to get Haaland in. But, you know, if you arrive there with 3 and you have to take a hit and it's worked, you've got a lot of points for being aggressive beforehand, and I think it's absolutely fine. Obviously, things could pop up. Maybe going Rodgers to Semenyo really will be worth it, and it's a transfer I make, right? Maybe I want to lose Isak and get Havertz, as discussed. Maybe Jackson doesn't hit the ground running after the international break as much as I would have hoped. Maybe Nkunku becomes a favor, maybe gets suspended, etc., etc., etc. So many things could happen. There will be injuries, rotations, and suspensions in this Christmas period, all at an increased frequency. So, for those reasons, am I likely to arrive at game week 18 with 5 free transfers? I would not say it's too unlikely, but there's certainly a possibility I arrive with 4. And that's essentially what I'm showing you. So the transfer plan for now is just to make Mbeumo to Bowen in 14, get Haaland in 18 with 5 frees, but I could definitely use one between 15 and 17. I'm obviously rolling in 13, and that would see me arrive in 18 with less than 5. But this is my plan at the moment, and things, of course, could be subject to change. Maybe I fancy a West Ham defender for the same run I have Bowen, but this is what it is at the moment. And I think it's solid because I have squad depth, and just having free transfers in the bank from 14, I'll always have 2. It'll just mean that I always have some flexibility and a bit of a get out of jail free card if I need to for this Christmas period. The captaincy has likely been finalized, and I will be still going for Cole Palmer. Now, many of the reasons as to why were discussed in the Everything You Need to Know video. One new piece of information, which we found out today, is that Jamie Vardy will likely be absent from the fixture. As discussed previously, I think this is a big deal. I think Chelsea will be able to dominate far more as such. You saw the performance against Man United, and they didn't carry the same threat in the side. And I think that essentially trickles down into the whole team and the way they play. So that's one reason. The other thing is, for the tactical analysis that I spoke about in the Everything You Need to Know video, I think he'll find a lot of space in between the lines. And I think he'll be able to hurt Leicester in a somewhat similar way to how Bruno Fernandes did. I think he's probably got the highest ceiling out of any player in the game, maybe Haaland aside, including Salah. I think Cole Palmer's probably got a higher ceiling. The only thing is he might play on the left side, especially with Reece James now injured. You could probably see Gusto inverting all the way into the right 8 as opposed to into the pivot as he did earlier. But who knows? Maybe Lavia doesn't play, and it's Caicedo, Gusto pivot, and ends up Fernandes pushed into the left 8 and Palmer's back at right 8. That would be ideal, and that would be magnificent. But even if not, from the left-hand side, against a side like Leicester, with all due respect, I think he can still hurt them a lot. I quite like the fact that I have the Nicholas Jackson, Cole Palmer double up. I've obviously got Sanchez, but I'm talking about the attack here specifically. Now, I did put a tweet out talking about the risk, but I'm happy to accept that risk in this case because I like the fixture quite a bit. Obviously, he'll be rested, similar to Salah as well. Now, the reasons for not going Salah are noted in the Everything You Need to Know video to a large extent. Primarily because I think Southampton are a little bit better defensively than people give them credit for. One thing is Aaron Ramsdale's out, and so is Jan Bednarek. Now, I don't know how good the replacement will be for Jan Bednarek. I think it has less of an impact given they play a back 3. So centre-backs, the difficulty that they face within the game, I would say, is somewhat reduced. And I don't think Ramsdale has saved them too many points this season. So I don't think that's a particularly big deal. It's mainly for me, Bednarek. And like I said, they're playing a back 5, so it shouldn't be too bad. I think it's a good opportunity to exploit again, similar to how I did earlier in the season when I went Saka against Haaland. When I have both the assets, I protect the downside. And I think there's upside to be had here, given how big Cole Palmer's ceiling is. That is a point that I hadn't probably thought about too much until now, but it's making me even more bullish for the Cole Palmer captaincy because of the risk reward dynamic that is there. So yeah, that's me lot. And that is all she wrote. I'm very much looking forward to fielding this team in Game Week 12. Hopefully we can get a huge score and a huge rank rise. In the meantime, before I see you for solving your problems tomorrow, if you could subscribe as we get closer and closer to that 5,000 mark, which would be fantastic to hit before the end of the month. It would be a huge achievement. I would be very grateful. Have a magnificent day in the meantime, and I shall see you tomorrow.